Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Greetings and welcome to Say So, where we talk about it, whatever it is. Because what you don't know can hurt you. So let's get to the root. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Letitia R. Stuckey. For today's broadcast, I really felt the need to talk about family. Because realistically, we all come from families, and it's more complicated in today's society than it used to be. So we'll go right into it. First and foremost, we all come from a family of origin, which consists of your caretakers, which can be your parents and your siblings. You basically grew up in that family. It can be your biological family or your adoptive family. And this is involuntary. We also know that God is the author of family. We don't get to choose who our mom, who our dad, we don't get to choose any of our family, but God chooses for us. So we just have to trust Him, um, as it pertains to our family. We'll talk about some of the dynamics of the family, and we'll talk about some of the functionality and the dysfunction that runs in families as well. Next, we have our family of procreation, which is the family that you create. Basically, your offspring. Once you get married and have children, that's the family of procreation after the family of origin of your parents and your siblings. There are actually 5 different types of family. The first type is a nuclear family. The second type is an extended family. The third type is a single parent family. The fourth type is a reconstituted family, which is something that I learned in my research. I'd never heard that term before. And the fifth type of family is the childless family. So let's go back up to the nuclear family. That's basically the traditional family. It includes a husband and wife, male and female, and the offspring that they care for. And even with our cell phones and all of modern technology, I'm a very visual person. So when I send out information, maybe post to Facebook or send out text messages, I usually attach pictures. And the pictures, when you type in the word family, that comes up for me is that of a male and a child in the middle, and the female, which is an example of a nuclear family. But in our society, that used to also be called traditional family. When I think of traditional families, I think of a married couple with a house with a white picket fence. They have a son who's the oldest, who can watch over and protect his younger sister, and a dog and possibly a cat. So that's what I think of when I think of traditional nuclear family. The second type of family is extended family, which has to do with your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, and your other relatives. And they can live nearby, for example, on the same street or in the same neighborhood, or they can literally live in the same house. So thus far, I've, of course, have a family of origin. I also have a family of procreation and an extended family. I was raised by my aunt and uncle. Initially, my family of procreation, my mom and dad, they were together. They were a couple and an item. And at around when I was about 2 years old, they separated and they split. So the structure of my family changed. At 4 years old, I became to live with my aunt Tangela, and later on, she adopted me and everything. At the time when I came to live with her at 4, there's a that was an alternative option to the traditional nuclear family structure. And the third type of family is single parent family, which I personally can testify to that I am a single parent due to my family of procreation. My oldest son TJ. He's 12, and his dad and I were married. And I have a younger son, Philip, and he's 3 years old. So I also have a family of procreation that I created. And as a single parents are usually divorced or widowed, not married or never married. And once again, I was married, and with Philip's dad, we were never married. So the third type of reconstructive, oh, as it pertains to single parents, and in my book, Cast Down But Not Destroyed, Destiny's Child, I actually wrote a letter to my mom. The first chapter, well, the first section of the book is called The Making of a Vessel. And the first chapter is called Ready or Not, Here I Come. And basically, that chapter is about a little bit about the relationship between my biological parents, Tawana and Worry. And it talks about the day that I was born. The second section is entitled The Breaking of a Vessel, because when I was first born, my dad literally caught me. So my mom and my dad were together in a relationship. They were cohabitating at the time. And the second chapter is called Mama, Daddy, Where Are You? And as I previously referred to, they started off together, but at around age 2, their relationship didn't last, so they separated and went their separate ways. So in one of the letters that I wrote to my mom, I was actually a single parent then, because after my mom and dad broke up, my mom became a single parent, and she had myself and my older brother, and we also had an older sister that passed away at about 4 months and 3 days old. So my mom um, became a single parent. So in the letter that I wrote to my mom as a single parent, we actually had a conversation, and we were talking about um, my my dad, and the issues and the things that came along with their relationship, and why they didn't stay together and what happened, because I don't really have any memories of him, um, because I guess at 2 years old I was too young to recollect a whole lot about having a family and having a mom and dad, which is what can be considered the traditional family or makeup of a family. So I wrote her a letter as a single mom, very empathetic and being able to understand her plight and how much of a challenge that it can be at that time. And at the time, I only had TJ, my oldest son, and it was after following a separation and a divorce of um, his dad and I. So I was just reflecting back on that letter, and I was in a pretty good place at the time when I wrote the letter to my mom, and I was basically ready, willing, and able to accept responsibility for some of the things that I hadn't dealt with as an adult, and I hadn't dealt with some issues from my childhood, issues with unforgiveness and anger and bitterness towards my parents, but primarily my mom at the time. So the letter goes into just expressing my feelings and expressing how I've always wanted her to be the type of mother figure that I could look up to, a role model, and things like that. So we'll transition now into the fourth type of parent, which is the one that I learned in my research that I'd never heard of. It's called the reconstituted family. And it consists of the blended, or it's also termed blended family, step family, or even complex family, where the children from a previous relationship are combined to form a new family. And this is the type of family that I have to look forward to in the future, because from my family of procreation, I already have 2 children. So at some point in the future, when I remarry, it can be considered a reconstituted, blended, step family, complex family. And the fifth family is a childless family. And I've also actually experienced a childless family. I got married very early at age 20. And for almost 5 years, my son TJ's dad and I didn't have children. Um, so we were considered a childless family because we were married, and that does constitute a family. So I have also experienced that. And even as I'm talking about my own personal situations and the categories that I fit into or land in. I want you as the listeners to consider your family and the different scenarios, because even just from this little information I've provided, just to review, I've experienced several different types of families. And so in addition to the five types of families, there are also other families that consist of a grandparent family, which means that there's no parent or child relationship or no parent and child interaction. So it's basically a grandparent raising their grandchild. And I've had the opportunity to work with grandparent families, and it's a very different dynamic. Definitely, it's important for the child to have someone to care for them and someone to meet their needs. But some of the things that we've run into is with a grandparent. Of course, they're two generations older than the grandchild. So if the child is very athletic or sportsmanlike or really active and outgoing, the grandparent may or may not be able to keep up with them physically because of the age difference, because of health issues and things of that nature. Also, for the child, it may be a different feel to have your grandparent at your sports events while everyone else has like aunts and uncles or their biological parents, which are younger than your grandparent. It just may feel a little different. Another thing with grandparent only relationships, when I think of that, I think of, for example, if the parent is incarcerated or in prison, and the child is being reared or raised by the grandparent. I also think if there's been a death, if the parent is dead and the grandparent then takes on the responsibility. Sometimes when there is substance abuse issues, the parent may be out on the streets or homeless due to an addiction or several addictions, then the grandparent may step in. Also, mental health issues, same scenario. The parent can be homeless, mom or dad can be homeless, and not have a place to stay or living in and out of shelters, a very unstable situation and circumstance for a child. So then the grandparent or other relatives may step in. Also, there are instances where there's domestic violence, where the mom or dad, usually the mom, has opted to give the child to someone else or allow someone else to raise the child because of the environment that she has found herself in, or maybe her partner, husband, baby's dad, or whatever doesn't really get along with the child, or there's some friction there, or because it's an unhealthy relationship and environment to raise a child in, or maybe mom just chose the the male partner or whoever she's involved with over her child for whatever reason. There's also foster family relationships, and the foster care system is literally a system. And I'm sure you've probably heard of the statement or the phrase "award of the state." So that's basically when the parents aren't active, or there's been a breakdown in the family structure. It could be, once again, due to mental health issues or substance abuse issues, lack of housing. Basically, the parents or parent, the environment is not conducive for to raise a child in a healthy situation and circumstance. So the state takes over. These children who live in foster care or with foster families, they can also live in a group home environment, which is basically they have like I believe you can term them house parents, where there are employees, adults that come in and they pretty much play the parenting role, and they cook and they clean and maybe help with homework and do some of the family oriented things, but it's a group of children. And sometimes they're related siblings and sometimes not. So it's a group approach. And it may almost depict a single parent family or household, because there's usually one person on duty at the time, and that could be a male or a female. But there may be instances where there are always two to give that couple type feel and spin. Also, there's a private home. So there are foster parents that take in foster children, and they are not biologic. Usually, traditionally, they're not biologically connected to the child at all, but they've gone through training and they're certified through the state and everything to parent foster children. that have experienced some sort of trauma or some sort of uprooting or some sort of damage to the structure of their biological family. And this is usually arranged through the government or social services. Most people have heard the term Department of Social Services. For short, we call it DSS, and a lot of times these foster parent relationships are arranged through the Department of Social Services. In addition, to go a step further, there's adoptive parents, and this usually takes place after a child has been in foster care for a while, and if the family and the child agree and they're a good fit, and the parents or adults and the children have grown attached to the child and don't really want there to be a disruption. For example, if the biological parents of the child have lost rights or signed over their rights or not been able to meet the standard or the guidelines set by the court system or the state or the government, then the child can be legally adopted, which basically means that the whoever adopts them now becomes their legal guardian, becomes their parent, and continues to play the parenting role for that child or those children. And sometimes when you look at the news, they actually advertise that a child is, in need of a forever home or forever family. So that's sort of the same term for adoption. Um, and it's a legal agreement. They become the legal parent, and it's permanent. There are always exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, it's a permanent situation. Alternative family is basically a list of options. For example, to be in a grandparent home, a grandparent family, extended family, childless family, basically an alternative to the traditional or nuclear family that we previously touched on. And so those are some of the different types of families. And once again, of course, I come from a family of origin from my mom and dad. I have a family of procreation. I'm currently a single parent, so my sons are growing up and being reared in a single parent headed household. I've experienced the foster care side of things, where the Department of Social Services became involved in my life at age 4. And then my aunt took me in and she adopted me. Not legally, but basically when I came to her at 4, I didn't leave until I got married at 20. So she basically took on the responsibility of being my mom and my caregiver and guardian. And also in the book, I have letters to in the book entitled "Cast Down but Not Destroyed: Destiny's Child." I have letters to my adoptive parents, which is my aunt and uncle, my maternal aunt and my uncle. Just thanking them for caring for me, for doing for me what I could not do for myself as a child. You're limited with the resources and the things that you can actually do for yourself. So they stepped in and they did that for me, and I just wrote them letters to let them know how grateful I was and still am, because that is the place that I call home with my aunt and my uncle. I can go there today with my sons, and we can just sit down and we can talk and eat and just have, fellowship and have fun. And that's where I consider my family roots to lie. And even from a mental health or substance abuse or professional point of view, I've worked with so many different types of families, and every family dynamic is different. Every family functions in a different way. And in my personal opinion, every family has a level of dysfunction. For example, what is acceptable or permitted in one family may seem or tend to be completely unacceptable or not permitted in another family. For example, just the terminology and the words that families use. Some families are comfortable using ebonics and just comfortable talking to one another in a laid back sort of fashion. And in other families, saying something would be considered disrespectful. But in your family, it may be fine. You're just laughing, you're just playing. There's an understanding or a norm that, this is the way we talk to each other, this is the way we communicate. No one gets upset or no one gets bothered or angry by it. By the same token, if you For example, if you were a foster child and you go to another placement and you say something to your parent and you're just joking or possibly being sarcastic or something like that, it may be taken in a completely different context. Also in the book, I go over the different placements that my brothers and I were in, and that's in chapter 6, which is entitled Are We There Yet? And as it pertains to foster and adoptive, sometimes parents and families take children in for different reasons. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but there are times or circumstances when they're not the most noble of reasons. It could be for financial gain so that they can continue to live a certain type of lifestyle and have money to finance that lifestyle. It could be because they want others to see them as good Samaritans or good people, and that may not be the truth. It may be the outside mask that everything is okay and the relationships are healthy, but on the inside of the home there may be something different. As the saying goes, if walls could talk, and if I were a fly on the wall to really see what goes on inside the house, because it's easy to put on a facade, it's easy to pretend that things are okay, but it comes out, in the children's activities. It comes out in grades dropping. It usually comes out. Sometimes at school, there's a guidance counselor or someone that the child may feel safe coming to or talking with about their situation, which is the reason for so many different placements. Because sometimes it's a good fit and sometimes it's not. Sometimes the parenting style is maybe a little too harsh or too stringent, depending on the child's emotional state, because each and every child has gone through some level of loss and is grieving something, whether it's moving from their old neighborhood, whether it's their parents not being there, whether it's friends from the old neighborhood and maybe having to move abruptly and not getting all of their things or all of their toys. So as usually a child is going through something emotionally anyway, which sometimes has a negative impact on their self-esteem. So they may not be as apt to trust, because realistically, the first and most important relationship is the relationship of your family of origin between a child and their parents. As early as infancy, the child is learning whether or not I can trust, whether or not I can trust mom and dad to change my diaper, to meet my needs, to feed me, to hold me, to bond with me, to meet my emotional needs as well as my physical needs, my medical needs. So it's very important, even at an early age, and that can also spill over into adulthood. If you have a relationship where you really don't feel trusted, you're not supported, don't feel loved at an early age, you can develop a level of mistrust and feel that people are going to or supposed to mistreat you, because that's just the reality of what has happened so far. So you expect more of the same. So in the book, I also go over statistics and talking about like single parent homes, talking about how, a disruption in the family structure, sometimes it leads us, I'll say us because I am included in the number, to substance abuse. It leads sometimes girls to promiscuous backgrounds, or to look for love in all the wrong places when you don't have dad there to be an example of what um, healthy dating is, of what a male's role is or should be in your life. Sometimes it says in the statistics that there are more risk of medical, psychological challenges, substance abuse, getting into trouble, criminal activity. It also talks about how the being in like a single parent home or single mother headed home, that sometimes children are more at risk for neglect and abuse from someone who's, they call them social fathers, or someone who's not biologically their father. Physical abuse happens sometimes, sexual abuse, emotional, some, because there's a bond that's established between a child and their parent. As a single mom, the bond that I have with my sons started as early as when they were in the womb. So when that's developed or not healthy, then there can be negative or adverse consequences. So it's just very important, um, important the connection and the bond that we have with our children, whether male or female. So even as I'm speaking, I really want you to kind of reflect on your family and your personal situation. And actually, the experience or story, if I could share with you, that brought this all together for me, happened so many years ago. It was in the early 2000s, and I was in undergrad at Forsyth Technical Community College working towards my associate in applied science human services technology degree. And we had a class, and we had a group assignment, if you will. And we had a list of maybe 10, I'm going to say maybe 10 things, and you were supposed to list them in order of priority. So 1 through 10, on a range of 1 through 10, and the first one, of course, the first 5 are going to be those that are most important to you and for you, and 6 through 10 are going to be those that are important but don't necessarily carry as much weight as the first 5. So the assignment was for us to complete, number them in order of importance. The second part of the assignment was to group ourselves with another person and collaborate on a collective list. So, for example, I would have my 1 through 10 listed in order of importance. My other group partner would have theirs. And of course, no two people are alike, so there's going to be some differences in the level of importance perceived by each individual. So, the third part of the assignment is for us to create one list where we've compromised and we've agreed that these 5 things are going to be the most important, and these other 5 things are going to be, some things that are not as significant as the first 5. So basically, to make a long story short, with this list, there were things like education and career. There were things like family. Basically, your hierarchy of what's important to you, what drives you, your motivation, etc. So we got to my last one, number 10, which is the level of most least important, was family. And I just filled it out based on how I felt, and a lot of mine was career based and education based. And, at the time I was newly married, so marriage was a very huge focus. And of course, in my mind, family would come later, so it wasn't very important to me. So to make a long story short, with my group partner and I collaborating, that's the only thing that we could not agree upon, because once she looked at my list or whatever, we had agreed upon the rest of the items. But once she looked at my list, she was like, she basically was like, family is so important to me. And she started talking about, how being supported by her family and being with them and everything was so important. So to make a long story short, we could not agree that family would be ranked as number 10. And after that class or whatever, just on the way home, driving home and everything, I was just reflecting, and I didn't know that I felt that way about my family. And based upon some of the previous things that I shared about the disruption of my family between my mom and my dad, and experiencing different placements, and being adopted by a close relative, my maternal aunt Tangela, all of those things had played a role in the way that I felt about family. And in reflection, I came to the conclusion that I sort of, if you will, blamed my family for the trauma and the abuse and the neglect and the things that I suffered at around age 4, when the Department of Social Services got involved, because I felt like the family should have been there then when I needed them. But for the most part, my family didn't know what was going on, because from the outside, pardon the pardon the alarm. I'm trying to keep my time punctual. So as we prepare to end this broadcast, I just wanted to share that story, because now, like I said, in reflection of where and how important family is to me, I've made some strides towards engaging more with family and visiting more, and interacting and talking and building a functional relationship with family. Because sometimes with family, we can sort of get into a situation or a place where we kind of use family because we know that they are family, and that they love us and that they would desire to support us in whatever way. So sometimes we can get to the place where we only call when we need something, or we only come around when we need something, or make ourselves known, which on one side is selfish because you're there when you need something, but what about when your family needs you or needs something from you? And it may not be finances or anything. It may just be that they're going through a tough time. And if you only show up when you need, then you're there to get for the most part. And then they'll see you the next time you need something. So I really wanted this Say So broadcast and episode on family to cause us to reflect on where we are and the relationships within our family, with our parents, with our grandparents, with our siblings, with our children, aunts and uncles and cousins, extended family, blended families. I just really wanted us to explore this whole complex structure of the family and how disruptions or challenges or dysfunction or fluctuations can color our perception on family and actually our motives and intentions and our actions. So, for this point of reflection, I just would encourage you to just continue to think about your family structure, where you are, where you've been, and where you're going, because at any point you can make a change. If there's something, a relationship in your family that's not going well, let's say if you and your mom don't get along so well, you've had some friction, or maybe your childhood was a bit traumatic, or you didn't get along during your teenage years, and some things were said or some things were done, and the hurt or the pain is still there, the memory is still there. Just prayerfully consider where you are and where you want to be. It could be that you're a single parent and you did the best you could to raise your children, and now that they're older, they've gone on with their lives, they gotten married, had their own families of procreation, then they kind of left you and don't really come to visit or come to check, or only come around, like I said, if they want or need something, which in reality I went. I have to honestly and transparently say I went through that phase, and sometimes I have to make a conscious decision with my biological mom because it's almost a sense of entitlement, like you owe me at least this. So it's easy to come to you when I need something, or when I need support, or when I need money, or when I have a need, because internally I'm feeling like you're and I'm entitled to this from you, at least this. So just please reflect, um, continue to be prayerful about your family situations and circumstances. And I know we didn't get into a lot of the adverse side of family situations and environments, but maybe this will be part one of a two-part series, because there are family structures. You look outside and you think that everything is healthy and everything is okay, but there are occurrences of incest. People have been molested by family members. So going to family functions and family reunions and birthday parties, weddings and funerals is not the most comfortable thing for them. So or there has been a rift in the family, or you've gotten into it with one part of the family and it's just easier not to go to the functions because you don't want to have to deal with that, and you don't want there to be a blow up or anybody to get their feelings hurt, or there to be a physical altercation. So family is definitely complex and complicated, but it's also God ordained. So there comes a time when we have to do what we can, when we can, if we can, as it pertains to our family. And know that you can only do your part in any relationship, in any interaction, in any family relationship or interaction. You can't determine what the other person says or does, whether they receive it, whether they get upset, their reaction or their response, but you can determine yours. So as long as you have the right spirit, you have a clean heart, you're going to them out of love and concern, to support them or to help them. If things go sideways and there's a big blow up or blow out, then you've done your part. You've done what you can to address the situation. So that, for the most part, concludes our broadcast on family on Say So for today. Remember, God has the final say so about where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. You are in the process of becoming. Until next time. Miracles and blessings. Pardon the delay.
Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know.